Welcome, and this is the Grassroots Education and Entertainment Network, your number one source of information, education, and entertainment. For honest, responsible, and dependable information, we stand supreme. To stay focused, inspired, and relaxed, choose green. Hello and welcome to the Ifagbemiro Show. And as usual, we will be discussing the basics, or otherwise referred to as the fundamentals of Ifa. All right, I would like to open the show by starting off with the recitation of one of the simpler Orikis today, and then we would proceed on today's topic. Divine Messenger, Divine Messenger of Transformation, Divine Messenger, speak with power, Man of the crossroad, dance to the drum, tickle the toe of the drum, move beyond strife. Strife is contrary to the spirit of heaven. Unite the unsteady feet of weaning children. The word of the divine messenger is always respected. We shall use your sword to touch the earth. Divine messenger, do not confuse me. Divine messenger, do not confuse me. Turn my suffering around. Give me the blessing of the calabash. So be it, so be it, so be it. All right, well, today we are still under the subject of the 8 essences of Ifa. So I would start off by going through the list of the 8 essences of Ifa. They are the spiritual essence, the divine essence, the religious essence, the worship and sacrificial essence, the medicinal essence, the historical essence, the scientific essence, and the cultural essence. In the last few sessions, we discussed, I think the last thing we were still discussing is partially to deal with the topic of Ori, and we were dealing with propitiation of Ori. And on the last stream, I mentioned many of the articles that are generally used for rituals, but that are also used for appropriating the Ori. All right. Today, what I want to do is I want to read some basic information again concerning the function of Uriki. All right. The word Uriki will be defined in the reading, but I want to start off by saying it is not the exact equivalent of what we call prayer, but it does contain a couple of elements that is similar or reminiscent of prayer. All right? There is a Ifa Orisa proverb that says, once we have been initiated, we need to reinitiate ourselves daily. The fundamental step in the ongoing reinitiation process is to maintain daily connection with spirit. This is traditionally done through the recitation of morning Oriki. The word Uriki is from the Elysian Uriki, meaning to praise consciousness. Ifa teaches that everything in the universe, from the smallest subatomic particle to the largest star, has consciousness or Ori. The linguistic meaning of Kiki in Yoruba is to praise as a way of calling forth consciousness. When a word is repeated in Yoruba, as in Kiki, it is a reference to the fundamental source or the spiritual inspiration for the single word. By saying Kiki, we are saying the word is a reference to the fundamental praise of the inner essence of a particular form of consciousness. The word Oriki in English can be translated to mean invocation. The purpose of doing morning Oriki is to start our day in alignment with our Ipori or our higher self, and to make connections with those Orisha who guide our destiny. The Prophet Orunmila taught that all spiritual forms of consciousness that exist in the universe exist in the Ori of an individual. This was an early expression of the scientific idea of living in a holographic universe. What this means, in practical terms, is that all forms of altered states of consciousness that are invoked in Ifa Orisa are a part of every person's Ori. We cannot receive Orisha from another person. Orisha lives in our consciousness and is a gift from Olorun, or the source of creation. When we initiate someone, we do not give them anything, we simply unlock that which is undiscovered. After reciting daily Oriki, it is traditional to do daily divination, asking for guidance from the immortals. It is also traditional after doing daily Uriki to pray for good fortune for yourself, your family, and your community, as well as the global village. To make the process manageable, daily Urikis include a prayer called Dariji, which means forgiveness. The Dariji prayer is asking the immortals to excuse us from the daily obligation of making offerings so we can receive direct access to their guidance. All right, I would like to now sort of review some of these things because it may sound very simple, but a lot of this stuff is very deep, very serious, and very, very profound. So I will go back to the top and I will try to explain as best as I could some of these things that I just read. All right. Now, the definition was given where the word Oriki was broken down into its elemental parts. And it is explained that the word Oriki is the joining of two words, which is Ori and Kiki. It was also explained that in the process of reciting Orikis, what our objective is basically to call forth consciousness. One of the words that they used here was the word to invoke. Now, this is a term that many persons may have heard before and may have associated the word invoke to particular negative things. The word invoke in plain English simply means to call. All right, so don't get scared if you hear the word invoke. As it is used in this passage, it is only in reference into calling forth that consciousness. This consciousness that we speak of in Ifa Orisa is sometimes described in other cultures by different name or different names, right? One of the concepts that I've came across before that speaks about calling forth consciousness is a condition that is referred to as mindfulness or awareness. Now, because Ifa Orisa is a spiritual discipline, one is required to take the time off to try to understand the very basic and fundamental principles of what one is practicing as a spiritual discipline. It is not superstition, all right? You would hear some people say it's not magic, but I am not sure what is the proper definition of the word magic. And believe me, when if I say that I'm not sure, it is not because the dictionaries don't have definitions. But if you go further than just using a denotative definition, and if you were to use etymology to try to put together what these words represent or mean, for the word magic, it's a bit of a challenge. You know, one have to really stretch one's mind to really identify with some of the denotative definitions that appear in most modern dictionaries. All right? But let's go back to the topic here, right? The word Uriki is from the Elysian Urikiki, meaning to praise consciousness, right? It says Ifa teaches that everything in the universe, from the smallest subatomic particle to the largest star, has consciousness or Ori. All right. We must acknowledge, as part of the teachings of Ifa, that everything in the known universe has some level of consciousness. The concepts associated with Ifa Orisa teaches us that what we follow is based on nature and natural law, and that everything in the universe that exists and that has an Ori follows the philosophy and the principles of Ifa. All right. Now, the linguistic meaning of Kiki in Yoruba is to praise as a way of calling forth consciousness. All right. And it explains when a word is repeated in the Yoruba, such as Kiki, it is in reference to the fundamental source or the spiritual inspiration for that single word. All right. And by saying Kiki, we are saying the word is a reference to the fundamental praise of the inner essence of a particular form of consciousness. Now, some of these things are not very easy to explain, and it would require some measure of study. Right? So, even though I am explaining some of these basic principles, it is always recommended for persons who are interested in Ifa Orisa that they find a place where they can go and where they could be taught by some proficient elder. And mind you, hear the word I use, proficient, because that is a very important element. I'm not trying to sell myself as no Ifa Orisa expert because surely I am not. I study, I do research, I sit with other people, I study under someone who I respect greatly and considers to be proficient. And this particular person happens to be a person who is very open and willing to share his knowledge and experience with me. And in turn, what I am doing is I am also sharing the said information. And some of the lessons that I would actually be teaching would be material that was prepared not by me, but that was prepared by this individual who teaches me. All right. Now, the word Uriki, I'm going back to reading, in English can translate to mean invocation. All right. Again, do not be afraid of the word invocation. It simply means to call. All right. So don't allow your mind to drift into any of the um, associations, the negative associations that may be associated with particular words. The way it is used here, it simply represents the concept of calling forth. And in this case, we are specifically talking about calling forth a particular state of consciousness. All right. The purpose of doing morning Oriki is to start our day in alignment with our Ipori or our higher self. All right. And to make connections with the Orisha who guides our destiny. All right. Let me talk a little bit about the concept of what is referred to as the higher self. This is a concept that I first came into contact with a very long time ago when I studied something called Moorish science. In Moorish science, they taught us that man has two inherent natures, okay? And they are identified as one's higher self and one's lower self. The higher self is referred to as one's spiritual self, and the lower self is referred to as one's carnal self. So, what they taught is that one should always aspire to a level of spiritual perfection. This concept being taught here in Ifa Orisa also encourages the aspirant to call out the best qualities that one can possess. The term used in Ifa Orisa for this, you would hear some people saying Iwa Pele, which means gentle character. That's how that translates into English. But the one particular that we generally look at is Iwa Rere, which is good character. But in the Ifa Orisha tradition, we go further than just simply saying good character, because the question now becomes, what is good character? Now, in the tradition, there is a term that is called omoluabi, and within the framework of the definition of the term omoluabi, it speaks about your birth and it talks about a noble birth, meaning a person being born with very specific traits or characteristics that are considered to be desirable. But the reality is that many times a person isn't born with all of the traits that fits into the categorization of what we call omoluabi. So in some cases, some of these qualities has to be fostered, as a result of which these qualities are outlined as well as they are encouraged. So two terms that we would pay attention to that didn't come up in this particular lesson yet is Iwarere and Omoluabi, which I just explained to the best of my ability. So I'm going to continue. The purpose of doing the morning Uriki is to start our day in alignment with our higher self and to make connections with the Orisha who guides our destiny. All right, let me take a little time and try to explain this concept of the Orishas associated with our destiny. Through the use of a process called Idafa, or some people may use the term divining or divination, when one is ritually initiated through the process of Adafa or Idafa, some people say, one is able to know and to find out what is one's purpose or what is one's destiny. In identifying one's destiny, a person is now oriented to carry out their life mission. Now, this is not only accomplished through initiation and Idafa, but it is also a part of Isheshe that when a child is born, when a baby is born, once a certain number of days has passed, that this child is initiated, the child is welcomed to the earth through ritual ceremonies, and the child's purpose or destiny is discovered through the process of what is called Idafa. So, what I'm saying is there are two known ways that are part of the tradition where a person can be guided as to what their life purpose and their life mission is so that they would know what they are required to do. In many instances, not only are you guided as to what you are here to do, but in order for you to accomplish that process, you would also be advised as to what you should not do that may form a hindrance towards you fulfilling your duties while we are here on earth or in Aye. All right. So let me go back. So the Prophet Orunmila taught that all spiritual forms of consciousness that exist in the universe exist in the Ori of an individual. All right, now this is another concept that is a little bit complex, and I will try to simplify it as best as I can. Now, according to lessons that came from some of the Odu Ifas, and the Odu Ifas are the literary corpus that is used by devotees of the Ifa Orisa community. The material contained in the literary corpus is what we use to guide our activities and to learn from the examples and from the lessons outlined, where many of the examples are related in the forms of stories as it affect all aspects of our life, whether it be daily life, weekly life, monthly life, yearly life. As as long as one goes through the process and one receives the necessary guidance, what is the governing Orisha, the things that you are required to do, etc., etc., and you are carrying out that on a regular basis in order for the fulfillment of your destiny, it is also important that we also exercise that consciousness and that awareness. Now, in terms of the Prophet Orunmila taught that all spiritual forms of consciousness that exist in the universe exist in the aura of an individual. Right. I was explaining. Now, it's mentioned here all that exists in the aura of an individual. The concept and the philosophy is that before we came to earth, before we opted to leave Orun to come to earth, we all went before Olodumare and we asked Olodumare to come to earth to aid in the development of humanity. It is also believed that you are born also into a particular family line. All right. Now, I don't want to get it too complicated, but I want to explain that one's Ori and one's destiny is connected to the agreement, the arrangement that one had before one left Orun to come to Aye. So when one comes to earth or when one is born, one needs to be reminded of one's purpose. So when it is taught here that all these consciousnesses in the Ori, it is making it clear that these are the things that are manifested in Aye that was agreed from before in Orun. All right, now to continue. This was an early expression of a scientific idea of living in a holographic universe. What this means in practical terms is that all forms of altered states of consciousness that are invoked in Ifa Orisa are part of everyone's Ori, which is what I was just explaining. So you come with your Ori as your guide. Now, in terms of Ori being your higher self, some people refer to such as your guardian angel. Some people refer to it as your higher self. As I said, I was exposed to that concept before now. However, it is described, what is known is that the role and the function of this is to lead a person towards accomplishing great and noble deeds that one has agreed to come and participate in. Now, your Ori is your witness in life as well as in death. All right, these concepts are an integral part of the tradition. All right, and your Ori goes with you wherever you go. When you die, your Ori goes with you. When you came, your Ori came with you. All right. So, like last lesson, last week's show, where I was talking about the importance of appeasing one's Ori, the idea is to draw one's Ori closer to one's self. All right. I would just finish up here, and that would be today's lesson. All right. What this means in practical terms is that all formal altered states of consciousness that are invoked in Ifa Orisa are part of one's every person's Ori. We cannot receive Orisha from another person, right? Orisha lives in our consciousness and is a gift from Olorun, or the source of creation. When we initiate someone, we do not give them anything, we simply unlock that which is undiscovered. All right, I think that is pretty clear. So basically, what is being said is that through initiation and through the revelation of certain knowledge and through particular practices, what is accomplished is that what a person is born with, that seed of perfection, is drawn out through these processes. So it's not that the person is giving you this. You came with these things. But through initiation, you are guided into the means by which these things would unfold and bring you into that higher awareness and bring you into union with your Ori. All right? And this today concludes the lesson for today. As I said before, these teachings are available in many of the shrines throughout the country, and I would encourage persons who appreciate the information being shared in the simplest and best way that I can, that if you want to learn further, you can contact me, or you could contact the host of any one of the shows on the Green Network, and we would provide for you the necessary guidance as to where you could receive more teachings on Ifa Orisa. All right, to all the viewers, I would like you to like, share, and subscribe. And please, at the end of the video, another video is going to come up. You could also look at that video for more information concerning Ifa Orisa, the Ifa Orisa community, or even things concerning health. Thank you for viewing, and I would like to say goodbye. Odabo.